Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I've decided once again to do another Eurovision themed video, this time looking at the UK's entry from 2010 in a what went wrong style video. Now I am currently living in the UK, I was born here, this is where I'm from, this is my UK British accent. I'm also a classically trained musician and I wanted to talk about kind of the 6 steps as to why the UK came last in 2010, why it deserved to come last, but also why in general the UK's attitude towards the contest is not the best. I did make a video about this topic regarding the UK a few months ago. You can go onto my channel and check that out. It will be how the UK can win/improve at Eurovision in the near future. But for the time being, I'm going to focus on Josh Dubovi's That Sounds Good to Me, which came last in the 2010 contest. So I've sort of whittled it down to 6 steps as to why this came last. Now, I just want to say firstly, this isn't my least favourite UK entry. I don't think this is our worst entry to date. Some people will argue that it was Electro Velvet in 2015. Yes, that was god awful. That was just shocking. I mean, they released it on the red button because I think the BBC were just too embarrassed about what they'd done, that they didn't want to put it on the radio. So that was one thing. Some people might argue the worst song was Michael Rice, Bigger Than Us. I think that's quite a close, I would call that a close tie for second worst. The worst for me is actually Daz Sampson's entry from 2006. Now that is just one of the most appalling pieces of sound I've ever heard in my life. That is, if you haven't seen it, check out 2006 UK Eurovision entry, Daz Sampson. It's basically this middle-aged white man dressed in a sort of weird pseudo-gangster looking costume that's yellow. So to me it's more like a sort of that kind of yellow is a sort of colour you think a fisherman would wear rather than a gangster rapper. And surrounded by this yellow-clad white middle-aged gangster rapper is a bunch of over 18-year-old females dressed as little schoolgirls singing along with him with this terrible, terrible tune. The lyrics were, "What did you learn at school today? That's what the teacher used to say." Something like that, just something really juvenile, a pure embarrassment to the nation. So I could make another video regarding that. But if we focus on Josh, because actually Daz Sampson didn't come last, Josh came last. Firstly, Josh wasn't the reason we came last. Josh is actually a very talented singer. I've heard him in other clips singing, and the poor guy, he put out a video recently talking about his experience at Eurovision. I just felt my heart sank for the guy because he seemed like he had an awful time, and he's had an awful time afterwards, and he's, you know, trying to get over what happened. So the 6 steps I've come up with aren't actually to do with Josh himself as a person, it's to do with just the lots of different factors which made the entry so crass. Just something that shouldn't have set foot on the Eurovision stage in the first place. So I will timestamp this as well because I don't want to ramble too much, but if you would like to skip to the different points I'm going to make, that's totally fine. So the first reason is, well, obviously it's the lyrics. You bring the sunshine, I bring the good times. just at your laughter. It's happy ever after. I mean, you've got the forced rhymes there. I mean, when you're talking about sunshine and good times, it's so, the words are just too smiley, and you couple that with the tune and everything, which I'll go into a bit later, it just really makes it so crass. I couldn't believe that actually was put on the Graham Norton show, that was put on the Eurovision stage in front of 200 million people. But, you know, this country has spawned the likes of William Shakespeare, William Wordsworth, Keats, writing the most magnificent poems and plays, and then you get that as a representation of UK talent. Think again, ladies and gents. So my second point is the dated sound, and I think this was actually its biggest downfall. It was the dated sound. So draft one of the song was very much a sort of Gina G 1990s disco type of song, except the 90s retro feel that artists incorporate into their songs today is not what we heard in the draft of That Sounds Good to Me. The draft of That Sounds Good to Me was more like the bits of 90s disco music that we've left in the past and that should stay in the past. That's that beat, the weird bell-like synths. If you know Gina G's song Just a Little Bit More, which went for Eurovision in 1996, it's very much in that sort of realm, and I'm kind of glad that they left that as draft one and tried to do something new. But draft two was worse because they decided to step back another 10 years into the 80s and make it a Butlins, Pontins type of sound. If you don't know what that is, it's basically holiday parks in the UK, very cheap holidays where there'll be a stage somewhere and there'll be some amateur singers and dancers on the stage purely there to entertain the kiddies, with that type of smiley, jumpy, happy sound, and that's really what they went for Eurovision 2010. Yeah, the dated sound, it was not helping anything, because if you think back to 2010, nobody was writing retro sounding music. It wasn't cool at the time. Maybe today it's cool because you've got people like Childish Gambino, all the rappers, all the hip hop artists, R&B artists using this sort of retro R&B sound. The Weeknd, he has some 80s sounding music. I'm thinking about the charts. I know I don't really keep up with the charts, but from what I can sort of pull out of the back of my head. But 2010, you're thinking of Katy Perry, Kesha, the Black Eyed Peas, that kind of thing, when I was in beginning of high school. And yeah, there was none of that sort of 80s retro sound, none of that hipstery attitude towards music. So it wasn't going to fare well anyway in that musical climate. Yeah, the biggest mistake was the dated sound. And if you want to go back and watch it, if you haven't watched it in a long time, you'll see what I mean by cruise ship performance, Butlins performance, if you're familiar with that. Point 3 is the singer. Now, not in terms of the singer being a bad singer, he's a great singer. It's more like his voice and how it clashed with, I guess, what they were trying to go for in the song. So from what I gather, Josh was trying to do a sort of musical theatre type of voice. Maybe that's his natural voice. But it was too much of that musical theatre cheese going in there, which was sort of adding fuel to that dated fire of the song. So that wasn't working very well. And clearly that's not the musical direction Josh wanted to go in. From things I've heard, he does a good R&B voice. I remember from that year there was Tom Dice, who did really well for Belgium, Me and My Guitar. And actually, I feel like if Josh did something like that, stood there with a guitar, singer-songwriter type of sound, he would have actually done quite well. So poor guy was sort of thrown in at the deep end there with a terrible song that just didn't suit his image or voice. But also, his voice type was not high enough to hit those notes at the end, the famous last notes where he just about misses the mark. And I feel bad for him because the songwriters and the delegation team, they decided to raise the key at the last minute for him, which meant that he was singing notes that was out of his range. And that's really not fair on the artist, and I'll hit this point a bit later on about the BBC and the delegation's attitude towards the contest and how they're treating their acts. Because how could they do that to a guy? Make him sing notes he can't sing? It's just terrible. It's a singing contest. It's a song contest. Why are you doing this to the artist? I felt so bad for him there. So, dear goodness me, I mean, it's horrendous what they did. Point 4 is the staging, the famous staging. If you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, it's sort of like 3 boxes piled up in a triangle trapezium shape. On the top of those 3 boxes was 3 women, backing vocalists, which I will come to later, with this sort of fanned out dresses, which looked a bit odd. Then Josh in his suit, and then 2 backing dancers who were wearing tracky bottoms, a weird sort of shirt, which actually, funnily enough, it sort of reminded me of Gavin and Stacey, the guy from what Gavin would wear very much of the time, but it was just an odd combo, and they were doing this sort of pop and locks and drops and kicks and weird hip-hop dance moves to this sort of cheesy 80s type of song, and it was just the most out-of-place thing I've ever seen in my life. And poor Josh was standing there in the middle of this catastrophe, this just a cluster of random things they threw together in there. The staging was just absolutely awful. I don't understand what was going through the choreographer's head at the time. Maybe they rehearsed to a different song, because if I was to choreograph something, I would not be putting in dance moves like that. And then, of course, point 5 is the backing vocalists, who were just like 3 strangled cats on an alleyway. I don't know what happened to them on the night. Some of the vocals were good. They did a good job, but other vocals you could just really hear this out of tune clashing with poor Josh in the background, and the mixing and the mastering had put these backing vocals so at the forefront of the track, so you could hear every single out of tune note from every single one of those backing singers, and it was just sort of making a car crash and just putting some gasoline on top so that it caught more on fire. It was like just awful. So that definitely let the song down. It's a singing contest after all. Your backing vocalists have to be on point. You can't just rely and put all of the weight on the lead singer's shoulders to carry everything forward. And point 6, which is sort of an overarching point of this whole thing, is the general BBC attitude, which the song just amalgamates the general BBC attitude, which is that the song contest is just a complete joke, that people in Europe only enjoy jokey kitsch songs that are stuck 30 years behind current musical trends. The people of Europe don't take it seriously, and also that we don't need to take it seriously because our music industry is strong enough and we don't have to prove ourselves or something like that, when actually it's like, you could take this seriously. There's a lot of people watching this contest who live in the UK and would love to, you know, switch on their television in May and be like, I'm rooting for my country. I don't think I've watched a single contest in the last 10 to 11, 12 years where I've really sat there and been like, wow, I'm so proud of the UK. I only had that for about half of Lucy Jones' performance when she showed off her amazing vocals, and I thought, actually, you know, this is good. They've done a good job here. The rest of it is just absolutely abominable. I could rant. I could rant all day. But, you know, the lyrics were so dated, cheesy, horrible. The dated sound, the way that they've got poor Josh to sing a song that doesn't suit him, the way that they raise the key without asking him and checking whether it's in his range, you know, the choreography, that awful choreography, the backing singers they probably didn't even audition them or listen to them sing live, you know, where they can't hear themselves incredibly well. You know, they didn't bother checking all of that because they don't give a crap. That's why, and they don't care we came last. And, you know, I rewatched the voting sequence the other day, and I watched the UK slip down and down and down and down to the last, 5 countries put their votes in, and then suddenly we were in last place with 10 points. And I even think 10 points is generous. So, yeah, let me know what you think about this. What did you think of Josh Dubervy's song? Even though it's nothing to do with him, I think he wants to completely remove himself from that situation. I'm thinking of doing more of these types of videos in the future. I might do my top 10 overrated Eurovision songs, my top 10 underrated Eurovision songs, that kind of thing. Let me know if you want to see more content. You know, we've got a long time here in the lockdown in the UK, so I've got plenty of time to make these. Yeah, so I hope you enjoy the video, and see you again soon. Bye.